So the other day, I was volunteering at a local event when I found myself helping a woman who had fallen on the blacktop. She hurt her ankle, felt dizzy, wanted to vomit, yet still, while she was feeling all this, she just kept saying, I got to get up, I got to leave, I got to go home and get my kid to soccer. And, this was all while I realized, no, this woman should stay still, she should put her head between her knees. And, I was watching her ankle swell up like, I don't know, a sponge that was encountering water for the first time. Why is it that vulva havers often dismiss their own needs? Sometimes in order to help others, sure, but sometimes just we're dismissing of our own internal messages and instincts. Sarah Gilbert and Susan Gruber, pioneers in the modern study of literature and English by and about women, stated the following: women will starve in silence until new stories are created, which confer to them the power of naming themselves. Welcome, Gyno-Curious listeners. I am Dr. Amy Novak. We're here to investigate what it means to be a healer and to be healed. So this morning, I'm going to try something a little different. I have had the pleasure of having a few guests repeatedly on Gyno-Curious, and I want to have conversations with some of those individuals on a more regular basis. And I'm going to call those episodes Vulva Views. And today, I've invited back Allison Chawla, who I adore and who I think she and I could talk until our next few lives. And just to remind the audience, Allison is a psychotherapist, a life coach, a mom, a partner, and a student at Harvard in ministerial studies. And Allison identifies herself as she and her. And I want these conversations, I want Vulva Views to be just that, a conversation. More free-flowing, perhaps a bit of weaving of my personal experiences, Allison's personal experiences. And please let us know what you think of this conversation, because that I'm here to serve and to teach and to open up these conversations to a broader audience. So please let us know. Allison, thank you, brave woman, for joining me in this new journey.
I am incredibly honored. Thank you so much for having me as a part of this. And I also want to add, you are also a safe space. So people can indeed come and give their honest, open opinions about the show.
Thank you. Thank you. So did you know the word hysteria originates from the Greek word for uterus?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking me.
Go for it.
Actually, I did know that because I remember when I was studying social work, the word lunacy was first created to describe a woman's behavior.
That's right.
And was never applied to men. So I went on a hunt to learn more about this absolutely awful, inappropriate, oppressive way of naming females only throughout time.
Hysterical symptoms. So, there's still a pervasive belief in the medical community that anytime a woman complains about her health, it's either related to hormones, those hormones, or all in her head. There's data demonstrating that women come into the ER with chest pain, they have to wait almost 20 minutes longer before they're diagnosed with heart disease. Or
yes.
That women who come in with abdominal pain are almost always told that they have something going on in the mental illness realm.
Correct.
I guess let's just start with the woman whose ankle was swelling in front of my eyes.
Ugh.
What do we say about her? But it's not her. It's all of us. It's all of us.
Gosh, I was there as well for that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I was just trembling with my own trauma, worrying about her, but simultaneously, sadly relating that she wanted to get home to her kids. And she wanted to get back to her family. And in my mind, I, too, wanted her to stay still, but I thought, how can we get her home? This is very important to her. It's just, I wonder if it's not just social and emotional. There's really a biological design for women that we come into the earth, and as soon as we become caretakers on whatever level that may be, partners, mothers in particular, we have this instinct to protect, regardless of what we are going through and what we are experiencing. And that silently starving really resonates with me, because silently starving doesn't have to relate to food. It can be emotions. It can be socially. I feel like I've been, I was silently starving in the closet getting dressed earlier because everyone was asking me for something. And I just was like, somebody get something for me.
I know. Yeah, I want to just reiterate for those listening, we're not just talking about mother.
Right.
I mean, I should say women who have had biological or adopted children, that this caretaking is so much a part of so many vulva havers' instincts.
Not all. No.
And I often think, okay, what is it? Not just instinct, but what is it also about the world other than patriarchy, or maybe it's always patriarchy and gaslighting that's been going on from day one that causes us to repress, to suppress, to create a hierarchy that's almost always about taking care of others and not ourselves. So from your point of view, where does that come from? Why?
God. I don't know. I mean, it's a combination of things. I think it's all of the above, really, because it comes from those things, because now we are more fortunate as women that we have more rights, and we're constantly trying to prove that we are equal and that we deserve equality. And so I think that with some of that comes that need to put ourselves aside, because the moment we don't, it goes back to what you said. Oh, she must have her period. Oh, she must be. Oh, she's going through perimenopause. Oh, she's, she has anxiety. Oh, she's this. Part of it is biological, where we are designed to, many of us are designed to keep going. And by the way, keep going. I think we are the more resilient. I just want to say. I just want to add.
You have blood coming out of your vagina every month. And
yeah. Right. And
I'm
still here. But it's a lot of things. It's biological, but it's also the social pressure, the emotional. I wish I knew. I wish I had a solid and succinct answer. I think I could help a lot of people if I did.
Is this something that you address or bear witness to in your own practice? Yeah.
All the time. And again, I appreciate that you said it's not just mothers, because I see it in teenage girls, trying to be the super girlfriend or the super friend or the super person, and, constantly forgetting about self-care, and then ending up, unfortunately, in a very uneasy state. And then they get fingers pointed at them still. So it feels almost like, well, how can we win, or how can we prevail feeling like this? Because we always have that, oh, she's hormonal, oh, she's emotional, or she's lonely. And yet men are still getting into brawls and bar fights and knocking each other out and shaking hands, and nobody thinks twice about it.
I know. So maybe this conversation ultimately is about saying to everyone out there, celebrate your hormones, celebrate your experiences, and don't reduce them in any way. And know that that this is kind of universal. It happens to so many of us. And I've had other conversations about how we have the thoughts in our head that just we perseverate. And maybe if we speak out loud about them, maybe if we just change the storylines about who we are as women, that will be helpful.
Yes. And I do the whole telling the story differently, we would call it like re-narrating or narrating differently in the office. I do think that's important, because back to the way that other genders or other people behave unapologetically, we're allowed to get emotional. We're allowed to feel like garbage, or we're allowed to want something. We're allowed to have a desire for something. And I do think we are still made to feel very guilty about those feelings. And so instead, like I'll say in front of my family, I'm allowed to get angry. I am allowed to be emotional. You two yell at each other. You throw fits. I say this to my children. My husband, if he has a response that's emotional, I say, you are more of a silent type. But I am also allowed to have an emotional response to something.
Yeah.
Or just quite frankly get pissed off. And that doesn't mean my period's coming.
Right.
It means you're all being pains in the asses.
Yeah. It's this wild mingling of the external and the internal that women do actually quite remarkably well. And yet we're criticized for it, or we're penalized for it, or we're asked to suppress the internal and only do the external.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's this weird light shadow stuff that goes on that's not really spoken about and yet implied all the time. I mean, that's the gaslighting.
Yes. And what I also want to highlight, it's not just coming from men. It comes from other women. And this is something I know a lot of women who will say, I support women, I'm all for women. And then the moment another female either becomes incredibly successful, for example, or shows a sign of confidence and stands up tall and straight with pride, or has some sort of moment where they're breaking down, I see the other women turning on them. And I think, you're not for women. You're for women when it's convenient and makes you feel strong. But we have to be for each other no matter what. So I don't want this to be just men against women.
No,
it's really, and I joke and I say, I think my theory why other women are that way is because we are also biologically designed, whether or not we recognize it, to get the seed. So we're all kind of fighting for the same seeds.
Yeah. We could be very sociobiological about it and reduce it all to procreation. And I tap into E.O. Wilson's work, but at the same time, it can be quite sexist. But you're right. I think there's some primitive, instinctual stuff that goes on, and I absolutely applaud you for bringing out what women can do to other women. And I think that Brene Brown talks about this. Other great thinkers talk about how we can feel shame and we shame others. And I don't know exactly how to help women be more gracious and accepting and honoring of other women other than to do the work that we're doing right here and now and speak out loud about it. But I guess I would also say the next time I look at someone, and I'll say particularly a woman, but again, even when I'm looking at anyone and feeling some level of critique, and I can be very critical, as my children would tell me, have told me, repeatedly tell me, a long line of mothers who are critical in my family, that I just take a pause and ask myself, okay, what is threatening you?
Yeah.
Because it almost always is about feeling less than.
That's right.
And asking myself, first, are they truly threatening you? Are they
or
about
is
to
your
take
ego a little soft today? Or is there do they have something that you desire, and can you handle that better and still be happy for them?
Right.
But I don't think, especially in this day and age, people are taking pauses.
No.
They're distracted. They go to a phone or a game or something, so they don't have to process those uncomfortable feelings that are directly related to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been conversations about technology on Gyno Curious quite a bit, and it's certainly out there. And again, I guess what I'd say to those who are listening, the pauses can be stepping away from your phone. The pauses could be a breathing for, saying, I am going to just listen to my breath for 30 seconds. You and I have talked about that breathing technique.
Yes.
And I have to honor it. Sometimes I suck at it. Again, I have to say, in my family dynamic, we talk about in my family that all the good and all the bad comes out. And that's a safe space. And I think that I'm blessed to be able to say that, because we can show both. But at the same time, where I really go kookaburra sometimes is with the people I love most. And that's kind of a paradox. What's that about?
I don't know. I can relate to that. I think most people, it's like you said, it's a safe space.
Yeah.
It's a landing pad. It's I'll joke with kids. Everyone tells me, and my kids are wonderful children, but people say, my gosh, I've never met children that are so polite and so thoughtful. And they come home and they're giving me an attitude. And I have to remember, I'm the cushion that they fall on. I'm the pillow that they want to hit. And I think it's the same for adults.
Yes.
We just assume because we have become adults in age that we don't have those emotions that we can only let out with the people that we know love us, will not leave us, will not run away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work, right?
Oh, yeah. Right.
Sometimes it doesn't work. And that's what makes that vulnerability, that openness scary, for sure.
It's very scary. But you mentioned the word shame when you were talking about Brene Brown earlier. Vulnerability and shame are incredibly uncomfortable places. However, they are so essential in development. And I think those are two feelings that people are really trying to avoid in this day and age, is the vulnerability and the shame. But shame, all of those feelings tell us how to behave properly and how to interact and how to not hurt people and how to prevent ourselves from feeling embarrassed in an environment again. So what's wrong with, doing something and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I'm ashamed that I just acted like that. Or I'm ashamed that I just responded to that happy person because I wasn't feeling so happy in the moment. But you get to the other side of it and then you just say, I'm not going to let myself do that again.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. the reflection in the mirror, so to speak, the metaphorical mirror, is not always a pretty one. And
No.
I can speak for myself. Do I always behave well? No.
No, of course not. We're humans.
And exactly. And it's, and I think it's particularly, there's so much going on in our lives right now. And the outer world is chaotic, and it bleeds into, pardon that expression, but it percolates into our personal lives, and then vice versa.
Yes.
And so sometimes it's really hard to catch hold. It brings me back to that woman sitting there after she's fallen, and her inclination is just to get up.
Yeah.
Where, in fact, the best thing she could do, probably for her family,
for everyone,
is to just sit still.
But that is, the response of a strong woman who knows that there are people waiting for her.
Yeah. So part of the strength that I hope that we can all figure out and behave with at times is sitting still. Because that takes courage, that takes strength, that takes thoughtfulness, that takes a willingness to say, I'm going to prioritize me first. And that's part of what I wanted to talk about too, because, it's so interesting. I've had experiences in my office where somebody will come in every doctor's office, you have a limited amount of time. And just a short time ago, a woman came in, and I've known her a long time. And so I know about her family, and she talked about her kids, and she talked about her partner, and she talked about everything external. And we had literally about 2 minutes left, or I was wrapping things up. I had done what I needed to do. And she said, oh, Dr. Novat, I just wanted to let you know, I'm bleeding so much in my periods every month, I can't leave the house.
Oh, geez.
And this is not an unusual story.
I believe it.
Allison, I can't tell you how often. And part of it is that damn restricted time frame I'm being asked to work in these days. But part of it is this proclivity for vulva havers to just say, what's happening to me is not important. What's happening to me is not important. Or it might be important, but I have to prioritize all these other things. It's the psychology of it is so profound.
It is really profound. And I do think that some of that stems from the trying to prove that we are stronger, as strong as. I just met a woman over dinner the other evening, and she was mentioning a health issue, and she said, I had stomach aches for 6 years. I thought it was normal. Because there is this pressure to just keep moving and just keep going. And I don't know exactly where it comes. I think there's many variables to that equation, but I do think some of it is the pressure to be strong, to keep moving. And then we forget, okay, this actually is not being strong. This is neglecting myself, which then could create a much greater issue. And then maybe I won't be here because I ignored something.
I guess I was thinking about Sue Monk Kidd said that there's always room for waking up some more.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that because I'm 62 and I love that I keep learning. And part of this podcast is about learning some new skill sets. And I want to speak to and thank my children because they were the ones who said, when I said, oh, I can't do that. I'm afraid of that. I'm not good at that. I'm an imposter. How can I possibly do that? And they're like, that's exactly why you should do it.
Wow, how great.
And it was. And I continue to thank them because this has been a true gift. But segueing into something you mentioned was, I think that maybe it's truer in the U.S. I'm not sure. But health is not just about going to see your primary care doctor and being told your blood pressure is good, or seeing me and being told your pap smear is normal, or that you have a clear mammogram. That's part of what makes us healthy. But it's also about what we do in our everyday lives.
Right.
So the stomach ache that gets normalized, or the tearfulness that we might feel every night before we go to bed gets normalized, or the hemorrhage every month that gets normalized. That these, again, part of this is what I want to talk about today is that just because you have, just because you have these symptoms doesn't mean you're not healthy. But just because you have these symptoms and you might have an illness doesn't mean you can't get well.
Right.
And that there's this, I like to call this kind of range, and that there's great health and then there's illness/death.
Right.
And most of us slide in between these things all the time. And that's, I think, a normal pattern. So being able to speak out loud about the stomach ache and say, oh, wait, that's okay. I can speak to that. I can honor it. I'm going to figure it out. Doesn't mean that I failed at my diet or I've failed at something else. We often, maybe I should speak to myself. It's about a fear of failure.
I think you're really hitting the nail on the head here. It's the failure and the shame to have to admit a weakness.
Yeah.
But that's part of being human. We're not robots.
I know.
You know, and I know that some like to believe that they have experienced enlightenment, but just to go back to what you said about constantly growing, you can't. If you're enlightened, then there should be death, right? There's nowhere else to go after that.
Right.
But it's part of accepting the vulnerability, accepting that it's not always perfect. I too go through that. They too go through that. And not surrounding it with so much shame.
Yeah. I have to share this morning. I slept particularly long, which is not common for me. I'm an early riser, but my sleep's been very disrupted recently. And I woke up really late, and I woke up completely disoriented. I was just feeling like, okay, I don't know north from south. I don't know 9:30 from 10:30. I've got things to do. And and at the time, it was very unsettling. And I talk about shame. I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't you set the alarm? Why didn't you, why didn't you do this and this to make sure this didn't happen? And
instead of, oh, I feel great.
I know. I just got 9 hours of sleep. What's that about? Yeah. I know. Exactly.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Oh no, I didn't start the day early enough. Oh golly, I didn't do this in time. Or now I can't accomplish this, or I can't do this for them, or so. And whereas my husband comes out of the bedroom when he sleeps late, oh, thank you for not waking me up. I feel fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't I feel fantastic when I sleep late?
I have to honor or be honest about also that the two women here speaking, I can speak for myself, but I can speak for Allison too. We are women who have a tempo in our lives that's pretty rapid.
Yes.
And as my partner often says to me, how many things did you schedule for 1 p.m.? Or did you leave 2 minutes to get from here to there? That I tend to pack in my schedule.
Yeah.
I must say, I'm getting better. You're younger than I am. And so I will share this with you and the listeners, that one of the things I'm really practicing right now is I'm going to try to avoid using slowing down, because I don't like, that just speaks to ageism, and I'm going to get rid of that.
Okay.
But I'm going to start saying I am going to intentionally schedule less.
Oof.
And that
sounds
I'm
great.
going to leave, I don't know whether I have felt a real sense of spaciousness since I was in college. I mean, we're talking about decades where I have jam-packed my life. And to some degree, it's natural. It's just the tempo. It's what my heartbeat goes with it. It just does. But some of it is a compunction to prove. Some of it's a compunction to get things done. Some of it's just my parents' voices in my head, a feeling of not doing enough. And that one of the things that I was gifted when I turned 60 a couple of years ago was, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was a beam of light. I don't know if it was a beautiful older friend who shared this with me. I don't know. Maybe it was just this merging of kind of messages where I just said, I'm ready to create more spaciousness and see where that leads me. So I'm going to share that with you.
Thank you, because I'm having a visceral response to you saying this. And that's to my own shame. Again, like you said, I am a fast pace. Someone says, oh, you're very type A. I'm like, maybe I should become like B- so I can chill out a little bit. But to hear you say that, I realize it gives me permission that it's okay. I don't have to do so much. And so that shows I too have this pressure, even though it is part of my pulse. It is coming from other influences as well.
Do you know where type A, B, do you know where that comes from? Because it feels so
It is, but it is.
So,
I really hate it. That's why when people say that, I'm like, I think that I'd rather be a C right now for whatever that means, because I'm tired of feeling this way.
Right. It just implies if we're all raised in a ABC world and you're told you're not an A, then
you're a failure.
Implicit.
I'm just going to start using my blood type. People are like, you're type A. I'm like, no, I'm actually an O.
I like that. I like that. Just I have to think more about that.
I'm actually an O negative. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I like negative. It's kind of a spaciousness, right?
Yeah, there's a void in room.
That's right.
That's funny.
I know it is. It is. You said something I wanted to respond to. Oh, that visceral response that you just mentioned.
Well, when you were when you were mentioning giving yourself permission to schedule less, I found myself taking deep breaths, or just organically, it was my reaction to you saying that, because I think it got into whether it's a preconscious or a subconscious part of me that's going, I really don't want to be scheduling so much. And when I heard you say it, like I mentioned, it was almost a permission. Like, oh, she can do it, and I admire her and respect her. I can do it. I can do it too. But I like how you change slow down, because I say slow down because you never want to tell someone to calm down. It's a trigger phrase. It can really make things exponentially worse. But I say slow down, but now I'm not going to say slow down anymore either. I'm going to say schedule less, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it really, I started to have, my shoulders came down. I was taking a deep breath. It was kind of like, and I'm pretending to wipe my forehead, like, whoof.
Yeah.
Feeling.
So I guess I'd ask the listeners to ask yourself, what does that phew look like for you? What can you do to create spaciousness? What can you do to take a moment? What can you do to be less critical and self-shaming? And I think the undertone or tenet throughout all of the conversations on Gyno Curious is about reflection, storytelling, sharing with others so that we don't feel so alone in this journey called life. And that when we talk about vulva havers and penis havers and the language that we use to help embrace all of our communities, that we are all just figuring this shit out.
That's it. Constantly. I joke and say I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
And I'm turning 47, but I'm still like, I don't know. What am I doing? Am I doing it right?
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah. I have to say so my kids are now out of the house and doing their own stuff, calling mom and dad pretty regularly, which I love and I don't always love. Sometimes I want to know a little less.
Yeah.
But that there is something about life's movements, aging, kids leaving the house if you have kids, shifting work, that all of these changes are really great incentivizers and for some folks, crystallizers, opportunities to just keep asking these questions and moving forward. And I want to point out that for some, all of this stuff we're talking about may feel like the words of two privileged white girls. And to some degree it is. To some degree it is. So, I meet women all the time who are working 2 jobs with children, single parenting, women of color, women of true hardships and obstacles. And I say with great heart how much I hope that these words can extend to you, to everybody, and that again, taking a moment to breathe, we can all do. Taking a moment to feel less shame, we can all do. That this work is not easy. It is hard. Yeah.
And taking a moment to listen. I just wanted to asking questions, but stopping and listening, whether that be to the answer someone else is giving you, to the discomfort your body is delivering as a message, but just listen.
I think many of us have heard this conversation where two people or two groups of opposing opinion about a very important matter are given rules and regulations to how to communicate. And the communication, the first step is you must listen and then repeat what you've heard.
Right.
And I love that because, again, in my fast-tempoed world, I think on a universal level, the problem with medicine right now is nobody's listening.
Yeah, unfortunately,
and so
I see that.
Patients are suffering terribly, and the system is suffering terribly, and physicians and practitioners are suffering terribly.
Oh, yes.
Because part of why we do what we do is the heart that we get in response and the healing that happens in response for ourselves, too. So I'm so grateful that you brought up that word listening, because it's not just on a personal level, but on a community level, on an interpersonal level, on a world level. And so we're going to wrap it up soon. And I guess I would ask you, do you have some tools that you might share with those out there who are not great at listening?
Yes, I would say the one tool or just lesson to teach yourself is what objective listening really is. And you gave an example that it's listening and being able to repeat back what the person says. But it is also listening and not making it anything about yourself. Even if you've had a similar situation, everyone's experience is unique and different. And instead of allowing your ego to get into the driver's seat and say, oh, yeah, me too. Oh, yeah, I've been there. Just listen. Let the person talk. Let them express themselves and really take a moment to process that experience unrelated to yourself first. Because it is so organic to relate everything to ourselves, as we do as humans and creatures who have egos. But try to listen. And when you have that moment of, oh, yeah, I want to say how I've done that too, or I've been there too, talk to that voice and say, no, this is not about you. Be okay with that little moment of shame. Oh, I just made that about myself.
Yeah.
And let it sit aside, or as I say, put it on the back burner. And really just be that safe space, that vessel for information or emotion for someone else or something else.
Yeah. Knowing that we are all so similar and yet different.
Always different.
Knowing that we have subtleties and major events in our lives that impact who we are, that are more often kept secret from others than out there. Knowing how to self-soothe. And all this is part of trying to be well, trying to seek health, trying to take a moment when you've fallen on the pavement and your ankle is killing you to just say, I have friends, I have family, I'll call them. They'll pick up my child and take him to soccer. And I'm just going to let my community who's sitting around me right now worrying about me and helping me heal, just receive it. So listening, receiving, sitting still.
And if there's not an abundant community or family around you, still allowing yourself to sit still.
Yeah. And even just for a moment, right?
Maybe be in pain or discomfort, but not trying to jump back into life with whatever that moment was.
Do you have any words you want to say to everyone out there for our first edition of Vulva Views?
Oh, I want to say keep listening. And I want to say, really, please give us feedback. I'm so thrilled to be a part of this, but I always like to hear the opinions of others. And I will put my shame and my ego in my pocket and listen to you.
Let's stop invalidating our own concerns. Let's excavate them. Let's speak out about them. That's my hope for this show. And so if you have something you want Allison and me to talk about, let us know.
Oh, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Please. We've got some ideas, but we would love more.
Yeah. Thank you, Allison.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Such an
you
honor.
to our listeners and the engineers at Radio Free Rhiniecliff, Jen Hammoud and Matty Rosenberg. Please join me each episode on Gyno Curious. And if you like what you hear, subscribe and follow us on whatever podcast app you're listening on. The way to get in touch with us is email your questions and comments to comments@radiofreerhinecliff.org or call us at 845-307-7446. Until our next conversation, be healthy, and please remember to relish your instincts and intuitions. They're great teachers, not to be ignored.